Okay, we're trying to get the sound fixed. Can you tell me if it's working?
I will. Did you press play again?
Okay, we're trying to get the sound fixed. Okay, so we're going to move on now that the sound is finally working. Sorry about that. So I'm going to start over.
Introduce yourself.
Okay. All right, my name is Angie Green. I am the Webb Middle School I3. I am also the librarian here at Webb. And my partner is Heather Shores, who is the Brandenburg I3. We will be doing the webinar together. If you have any questions or comments, please make sure you post those and we'll try to get them answered before we leave. Heather will be monitoring the chat while I go through the steps. Now, to start off using Google Forms, you need to log into your Google account. All teachers and students in GISD have their own Google account. For teachers, you just use your school email address. As you see here, I've used my school email address. You use your normal password you use that gets you into your Google account. Now, if you'll notice these little squares, that's where all the Google apps are. When you're in your Google Drive, like you see here, if you click more, you see the purple Google Forms towards the bottom. That is what you're going to click on to get to your Google Forms. Now, if you've never done Google Forms, if you'll notice this More button in the top right-hand corner, it gives you some basic templates. Now, I have several that are recently used, but if this is your first time using Google Forms, you can at least choose some basic ones. Education, they give you an exit ticket, a blank quiz, a worksheet, different ones that are just commonly used in education. Also, you can use a Google form for personal or work things. You can use them for an order form. You can use them for a party invite. It's very useful and easy to use. Now, if we want to start a new Google form, we're going to create a blank one. So right here, where the plus sign is, we're just going to click and it opens up our blank form. The first thing you need to look through, the gear in the upper right hand corner are all your basic settings. We're just going to touch on these briefly so you know where they are. Under the general settings, collecting email addresses, basically it just tells you the person's email that is responding to the form. If you need that, you would go ahead and click the button. If you don't, you can leave it blank. Now, one thing I recommend, if you are using a Google form as a quiz with your class, go ahead and restrict it to Garland ISD users. This limits your students to having to use your school email address instead of a personal email address, which is really important to get them in the habit of using those school email addresses. Also, if it's a quiz, if you're treating it as a quiz, you can limit it to one response so they can't take the quiz multiple times. Then you have a choice whether the people, whoever's taking the quiz, they can change it after they submit. So maybe you send out an invitation. You might want to let them edit it after they submit in case their plans change and they need to change whether they're coming to your party or not, stuff like that. Under the presentation on settings, you have choices to show a progress bar so they can see how much of the form they have completed. You can shuffle the question order. So if students are taking a quiz, each student will get the quiz in a different order so they can't see what someone else is doing. Or if they do, it'll look like a different quiz to them. Under quizzes, you can choose to make it a quiz. If you do choose to make it a quiz, it gives you more options. You can release the grade to them, and you can choose when to release the grade. You can release the grade immediately after they submit it, or you can wait and look at it yourself before you let them see the grade. Also, you can have them see missed questions, correct answers, point values for each question, basically all the information they will need on each part. Now, when you start a Google form and you want to title it, we're going to title ours Election Day 2016. Once I've typed this in, if I want that to be the name of my Google form, if you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, excuse me, it says Untitled Form. If you just click on that button, it changes it to the title that you chose. So you don't have to continue typing it in. Now, on the right-hand side, there's various buttons. The top button, the plus sign, that is where you add questions. You get to choose everything about that question. Yes, you type the question out yourself, but you also choose, do you want it to be a multiple choice question? Do you want it to be a short answer, paragraph, whatever is appropriate for the question that you're putting in? It's your choice. If you do choose for it to be multiple choice, you choose how many answer choices they have. Also, if it's a quiz, you might want to make sure that they're required to answer that question. It's not optional. They have to put in an answer. Now, I'm going to go back and show you a form that I've created. So let's say this math quiz. I've put in some various questions. Let's say I decide that that this is my first question. I don't want it to be my first question anymore. I think it would be better as my second question. If you'll notice, when you hover above the question itself, little arrows come up. You can hold down your mouse and you can move the questions however you want to put them. Now notice down here, one of my questions is, what is your name? This gives me the ability, well, first of all, notice for the answer key, this question, I didn't assign any points. But what I can do is move this question to the very top of my quiz so that when I'm looking at the results, which I'll show you in a few minutes, the first thing that I see is the student's name. This just makes it really easy. Instead of looking at their email address and trying to figure out what student that belongs to, I have their name. And since I assigned 0 points to it, it doesn't affect their score. Now, in each question itself, along with choosing what kind of question it is, since I chose it to be a multiple choice question, I can also choose how many points I want each question to be. You can choose whatever you want so that your quiz adds up to whatever the number of points you want. Now, this is kind of just a basic little quiz just to show you how it's done. Over on the upper right-hand side, once you've put in your questions and your answer choices and you have assigned points to each one, if you decide that you don't want one of the questions anymore, when you click on that question, you'll notice there's a little trash can. You can choose to delete that question from your quiz, and it just automatically takes it out. It gives you an option to put in another one, but you don't have to put in another one. That's your choice. Now, up at the top, close to where we looked at the settings a few minutes ago, there's a color palette. You can change how your quizzes look. So you can color code them if you'd like. Whatever color you want to use, it'll change the color palette. Now, if you don't like any of the colors, you can also choose themes. So there's various themes. So if you are doing a Google form for a birthday invitation, you can choose a birthday theme and it will apply it to your form. So it's kind of fun to see all the themes that are there. Now, notice also under themes, you can upload your own photos. So if you have a photo that goes with a unit you're teaching, you could put the photo in and that could be the theme for your quiz. Once you have your Google form arranged like you would like it, the questions, the point values, next to the settings icon, you'll notice there's an eye. That is your preview icon. If you click on that icon, it lets you see the quiz as the students will see it. So I'm going to go ahead and answer the quiz so we can look at how the results come up. I'm going to make sure we're going to get some right and some wrong, just so we can see what it does. Notice here, the quiz I took out, I didn't change it, and it was still required. So I need to make sure that next time I don't forget to put that question back in. So it shows me that my response has been recorded. I was able to go through the entire quiz to see exactly what the students are going to see, to be able to take the quiz just like they're going to do. Now back on my actual math quiz, I just went back to my Google form where I was creating it. Now remember that quiz that question I deleted, I would need to add back in. We're gonna save that. I want to show you the responses. Under responses, this is pretty cool. You can see the responses as a summary, or you can see them as individual responses. I'm going to show you a quiz that I made, and I had a lot of web teachers that were nice enough to take this quiz for me so I could show you some responses. So this is a summary. It tells me the average, the class of, well, 13 people took the quiz, the average, the median, and the range. I tried to make it really hard. It was a Halloween quiz, but it shows me how many correct responses for each of the questions that I put in out of the total number of responses. It shows me the email address and then what each person made when they took it. But also, if you'll notice, if you click on individual, it lets you look at each person's quiz and each question their answers, whether they got it right or wrong. So if you have a class and you see, well, over half the class got a particular question wrong, you can go through and look at all their quizzes individually and see everything that they did, which is awesome. If you'll notice this little green plus sign in the upper right-hand corner, if you click on that plus sign, it gives you a spreadsheet of your results. So it tells you when the person took the quiz, the email address, their score, and their answers for each one. So on the Halloween quiz that I had some teachers take for me, you can, the score is already done for you. I did have to assign the points, but besides that, it grades it right there for you. So it's a really, really easy way to do a quick quiz to see where they're at, what they know, what you need to go over again. Now, one thing I wanted to show you on the math quiz, on these responses, if you remember, I put one of the questions was, what is your name? When they answer that question, it'll give me the students' names. So that allows me to see a list of the student's name along with what their score was. So there is my score. I made a 60 out of 80 points total, and that's the student I would assign the grade to. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to show you, to put in the question, what is your name? So that even though there's no points assigned to it, it just helps you to find the grade for each student a little bit easier. Now, one thing I wanted to go back and show you under responses, this accepting responses tab, you can decide whether you're accepting responses or not. So let's say you want to give your students a time test. It's multiple choice. You can put the time test in here, tell them, okay, you have 25 minutes to take this quiz, time it. When the 25 minutes expires, you can just quickly go to not accepting responses, and it cuts their time limit off. So that might be one way to use the time limit, or the accepting responses. You could use it as a time limit. Another way might be a survey where you want them to, over the next week, answer this survey. Once the survey's over, it gives you the opportunity to turn it off and the survey to end. When we are previewing our quiz, let me go back. Nope, sorry. Okay, we're going to preview the election day quiz. Remember, the preview icon is the eye in the upper right-hand corner. When I preview it, if I notice there is something that I left off or something I need to change, if you notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a pencil that brings you back into editing mode. So you can go back into adding your questions, assigning values, doing all of those you need to do. Now notice, besides adding questions, you can choose to add a title and description. So if you have different sections of your test and you want to add a new title in the middle of the test, you can do that. If you want to add an image that goes along with the question, maybe put an image in and they answer the question about the image. You can upload an image from your Google Drive. You can search for an image. You can upload it by URL. There's a lot of choices there. You can also add a video and section the test off into different sections, as you see, like section 2 of 2. Now, for when we're looking at responses, I only have one response here. Is the quick little response I did. But if I want to delete this response, under the 3 dots next to the plus sign, remember the plus sign gives you your spreadsheet. Under the 3 little dots, you can choose to delete all the responses. So I can just delete all those responses and start over. So I still have my form, but now my response is gone, so I could redo it. So this would give me a chance to fix that last question before, and then go ahead and put in a correct response. Also, under responses, at this point, I don't have any responses, but for the math quiz. But if I go back to my Halloween quiz and the responses there, I can choose to print all my responses, and it prints them out. It puts them on a sheet for me to print out. Now, if you have been using our Google apps with your students, or even with your colleagues, if you decide you want to use Google Forms and you're trying to figure out how to get that form to people. So let's say this Halloween quiz. I use this with teachers just so I could have some responses to show y'all. In the upper right-hand corner, you see the send button. This gives me my options of how to send it to whoever I'm using it with. In this case, I sent it via email. So I chose email. I typed in their email addresses, added a subject and a message, and just sent it. You can choose to include the form in the email. If you do, that when they open the email, they will see the entire form. If you don't include the form, they just have a link and they go straight to it. Now, another way, if you want to use it with students, it will give you a link. So I click on link. This is the link to my Google form. I click on copy. It tells me it's copied. Now, if you have a Google Classroom with your students, like I have one here, I can choose to create an assignment, and I'm going to title my assignment. I'm going to say it's due, let's say Friday. And I'm going to, hold on, sorry. Copy that link in and add the link there. So now they have the link to the Google Forms that I created on the Halloween quiz, and it gave them a due date, and I can assign it to them, and it comes up in their Google Classroom as a Halloween quiz, and it tells them they have to do the quiz. It tells them when it's due, and all they have to do is click the link. So if you are using other Google products, it's a really easy way to give a quiz to students. Let's go back to our quiz. The last way to share it, we talked about email, we talked about links. You can also embed it. If you have, let's say, a blog, you could embed it in the blog. I don't know how you would, I mean, it would just depend. You probably wouldn't use the embed as much as you would either the link or the email. I think those would probably be more common. That's pretty much the basics. Do you have any other questions that I can answer or try to answer?
I'm just using that Excel spreadsheet.
I can answer or try to answer.
Just
Hold on.
how useful that is.
Okay.
You did a
Okay, so in closing, just wanted to remind you, if you choose to use Google Forms, when you're looking at your responses. So in closing, just wanted to remind you, if you choose to use Google Forms, when you're looking at your responses. So in closing, just wanted to remind you. I guess it's. Hold on. When you're looking at your responses. Okay, sorry about that. I'm sure you're hearing craziness on the volume. Don't forget about the spreadsheet button to create a spreadsheet of all your responses. Have a good day. Don't forget about the spreadsheet. Thanks for joining us. To create a spreadsheet of all your responses. Have a good day.